We took many school trips to Greece and Italy with the kids, parents, teachers. We were visiting classical kingdoms like Corinth, that you can see here, and Delphi. Both of them involved climbing. In fact, this video is actually from the time where we started the new rule that we all had to climb everything. Delphi, you also have to climb a very similar altitude. These are two of my favorite places. I'm Mr. Hall, and this is Ancient History. Welcome to Classical Kingdoms, where timeless stories reveal truth and wisdom for your journey. This is lesson number 27, the center. Delphi is the center of the world. Corinth is the center of shipping and trade. And I'm excited to share these two city-states in one lesson, pretty much because they are two of my very favorite places to visit. And it's not for the obvious reasons. I think, like the Apollo Temple, because Apollo's everybody's favorite. It's really because they are the center of understanding classical kingdoms, especially Greek history, but all of it. For example, Corinth and Delphi have games that play a significant role in the Olympics. So make sure you stick around. We're going to unpack all of this, the understanding of Delphi and Corinth. So this lesson is special to look at Delphi and Corinth. I promise it's going to help you understand all classical kingdoms much better, all of classical history. So first, let's go to the beginnings, the Bronze Age beginnings, the earliest history of Delphi and Corinth. Then let's go to the Dark Age after the Dark Age. So from the Trojan War all the way to the Archaic Age, what's going on with these two places? Third, it's the games. If you're going to be important, you've got to host games. And then fourth, it's that enduring legacy. It applies to you and how you understand what's at the center of your culture. Start with the founding king, Sisyphus, the king of Corinth, when he needs to go visit Delphi. King Sisyphus was known to be a clever king. If you look at the map, you know he's smart, he's clever, because he founded Corinth at a perfect location. Look at that. Let's zoom in a little bit. Do you know the name of that narrow strip of land that connects two larger pieces of land? That is an isthmus. Corinth is on the isthmus. And that gives them a central location for land and sea. And even the weather favors ships to come here. So Sisyphus solved this. Of course, he's very, very clever. He's clever also. Remember in the opening that you saw the top of Corinth. He's clever enough to know that that will be a strategic advantage. If he builds walls, it's only 1,800. You can climb up there. It's not really that long. And you'd be safe behind the walls. So Sisyphus is very clever also because of the resources in the water, not just for transportation, but how about food? Plenty of fish. And the number one, do you know what their number one favorite fish? Octopus. These waters are perfect for octopus. So octopus hunting, octopus fishing is real popular. And one of the restaurants we ate at, the chef was out catching octopus in the morning, and we were eating them by the evening. King Sisyphus might have been an octopus fisherman. You might have watched him one day, because the reason he needed to go to Delphi happened after he saw something very tragic off in the distance on the top of that cliff. He saw what looked like a boy falling, and his sense of duty as king meant that he should find out. And when he came close and saw that this boy is Melicertes, the connection to the Olympian gods and the importance of this situation, what do you do as king? And maybe you're witnessing it. Maybe you offer to help because something is happening here. And in order to understand it, we're going to need to go to Delphi. What does Delphi offer by way of understanding? It is the center of understanding. So when King Sisyphus sails to the west, you could sail in about a day, and maybe you would have joined when you offered to help and be part of this entourage. He's going to visit the Oracle of Delphi. That's a place to gain understanding. If you had joined King Sisyphus on this journey, might have been your first, you would have noticed a lot of other people doing the same thing. They're coming to Delphi. They might have come from Corinth because of the central location to sail from there and come to this port at Delphi. And you would want to know, what are they coming here for? What's their question? What's their puzzle? What kind of understanding are they seeking? Because if you're coming to Delphi, there's no higher oracle than Delphi. There are other oracles, but you must be coming to the top level with your biggest questions of life. And you climb, that yellow arrow represents that port where you would dock your ship and then climb. I've done half of this climb. I want to do the whole thing. This is a beautiful setting, by the way. I mean, Delphi, to be in Mount Parnassus at about a similar elevation of what the Corinth is. So climbing takes a few hours. It's really nice. And the city, of course, is laid out in a very beautiful way as the sacred way kind of winds the side of the hill. But as you and your companions were traveling, maybe you could overhear King Sisyphus telling the story about Apollo killing the Python, right? Because Apollo has a temple here. He is pretty much the reason why this oracle is such a high-ranking oracle. Because when the Python was guarding this place, it already was an oracle before, and did Apollo want his own oracle? Did he want the authority over this one? It was looking like a great location. He probably thought, hey, this is a really beautiful spot for a temple and for people to form a cult around him. But the other story is that this Python might have been really mean to his mom when she was pregnant. So he's seeking revenge on the Python. So when he kills this Python, he commemorates his success in an interesting, in a unique way that I'm not going to tell you yet because it's part of a later section in this video. But just remember that he killed the Python. And it's not the only reason. If that's not enough for you to believe that this oracle is unbelievably important and top of the list, Zeus had sent out 2 eagles to try to find the center of the world, and guess where they crashed into each other? Right here, Mount Parnassus. So there you go. As you were climbing up the sacred way, this would be one of the sets of stories that you would tell each other. I think it's like really good marketing, really good tourism. This is the #1 oracle. You've got to come here to gain understanding, and it's beautiful. So you'll enjoy it. I love it, of course. You are coming to this is a model. This is the model in the museum. And if you zigzag up the sacred way, you notice there's lots of small buildings. There's a lot of walls with inscriptions on it, things that you would be reading as you go. Stories. These are all from different city-states, different Greek accomplishments, people's names, things that are happening in Greece to help you understand what's going on. And shout out to our very favorite tour guide, Penny. She grew up here in Delphi, and she is pointing out that the walls have writing on them, and she's reading them to us from the ancient Greek. What did they say? There's a lot of stories there to help us gain understanding. But we're with the king, King Sisyphus. We're going to go to the central focus, the temple of Apollo, because the king had this horrible scene. He saw the boy fall. He knew that it was the son of a king and that he was connected to the Olympian gods. There was some importance here. And so he's seeking special, now only 8 times a year, the temple kind of opened up with the priestesses that would inhale these gases, and they would kind of babble out, and then the priest would try to interpret and give you some special response. That didn't always happen, but as you learn more about Delphi, there's a lot more ways to gain understanding than just those special shows 8 times a year. But maybe King Sisyphus was so important, and he got one of these special arrangements from the priests, from the priestesses at Apollo. And he's expecting an answer, about the significance of this boy that fell. And instead, he receives a very concerning warning to himself. They spoke of great deception, a challenge to the very gods, and a relentless struggle against fate. I'll say that again. Great deception, a challenge to the very gods, and a relentless struggle against fate. That's supposed to help you understand. The message that he received from the oracle on this journey did not tell him what he was supposed to do about this boy. I'll tell you what he did do about the boy and what he saw in the next segment. But right now, Sisyphus is looking around, looking to his entourage, his wife, his advisors, and what is he to do from a message like this? What's next? The messages that Delphi handed down to people, they're recorded and we can read them. And they are oftentimes very ambiguous, hard to exactly nail down. You just want something really clear and simple. Now, if you were one of the travelers who now is standing around, just outside where you're standing, here is a nice view of Apollo's temple. But the number one, the top saying, and we think this is Socrates who said this, or it predated Socrates, but know yourself. This is like a maxim from Delphi. Delphi claims to own this saying: know yourself. Know who you are. Understand yourself. Get to know your strengths and weaknesses and be aware of those as you enter into a situation. As wisdom lessons. The second one that's so popular, that's famous and attributable to Delphi, is everything in moderation. Everything in moderation. Nothing in excess. Sometimes you see it like that, where they say nothing in excess. Is that good advice? Does that help you understand things? Like, if you know yourself, and let's say you open a bag of chips and you know yourself, are you going to eat the entire bag? Not if you have this other advice, everything in moderation. Do you see Delphi is offering you understanding? Even if you didn't get the top show from the priest, which is for the very important, kings, royalties, big decisions. And you'll hear about this in other historical situations because they're going to come here. But on a day-to-day level, if you know yourself and you consider that everything should be balanced in moderation, nothing in excess, would that give you a virtuous path? And now when you walk outside in front of the Apollo temple, and there's now monuments, so things written on the wall, things inscribed above the temple, these sayings that are good advice. You would also notice a trophy that the Greeks put here. Kind of I call it a trophy. Sometimes they'll call it a treasury. Kind of like a shrine, but not really, but it's a representation. And there is a horse. There was a horse placed here. And why is there a horse? Because before the Dark Age, at the end of the Bronze Age, there was a Trojan War. And how did the Greeks win? They won because of the Trojan horse. Now, they put this here as a reminder, and it helps us understand the story of the Trojan War. But which way do you go in your understanding of this horse? Sisyphus was just warned about great deception and a challenge to the very gods. Sisyphus received this warning, and something very ominous is laid on top of his shoulders as he journeys back. He's thinking about this message, deception to the gods, a challenge to the gods, and that he would have a relentless struggle against fate. That's what's headed for him. And could that possibly be the message of the Trojan horse? Now, if you're in Delphi, that's Greek. And if you're in Delphi, you're going to hear the clever and inventive message If you need to understand the Trojan War, the Greeks are going to want you to say, clever and inventive, Athena helped Odysseus come up with this clever idea. And if you want to understand greatness and winning a Trojan War, this is how you're going to understand it. We're very important and prominent from the beginning, but we're skipping ahead to the Archaic Age. Now it is after the Dark Age. We are ramping up. Greece is getting strong. They're developing all over the place. But start with Corinth. What is Corinth doing to ramp up, to become more prominent and important? They're getting rich. How are they getting rich? Due to its location on the Isthmus, they have taken advantage of their geography. King Sisyphus was clever. He knew how to make the most of this situation. Their geography is so good. If you were a merchant, you might have put yourself in this position before. You're sailing around on the seas. Now, would you want the dotted or the dashed? You want to go trade with some of these trade partners way over in Italy. It's the Archaic Age. There are people there now. It's a growing place. There's a lot of Greek people moving there. So you want this trade network. Do you want the dotted line or the dashed line if you were going to trade? I'll give you a hint. One of them could take almost 30 extra days. So which one do you want to take? Well, this is a lesson about Corinth, so maybe you're going to guess dotted line. You'd be correct. And here's the innovation. Here's the invention that the Corinthians are really getting rich off of. The Isthmus has not been carved out as a canal yet. That could come later, and then we could just like sail through the canals, but that's not a thing in ancient times. The Diolkos is a thing. The Corinthians had built a road from one side of the Isthmus to the other side. So they could unload your ships. You could stay over a few days. It's a party city. There's a lot of stuff going on in Corinth. Like, it's designed for people to visit. Oftentimes, Corinth is compared to the Las Vegas. If you've been, Las Vegas has so many tourists for trade shows. Like, all these big events, people go and they visit. It's at a important location. Maybe you go to Las Vegas because you're going to travel to the Grand Canyon, to Death Valley, to Zion National Park. Whatever it is, travelers go to Las Vegas for a lot of reasons. Corinth is often compared to Las Vegas. So if you are in the shipping, if you are a merchant, your ship might get unloaded, or if it's small enough, they could just drag it out of the water and put it on wheels. The Diolkos is going to make Corinth rich, because while you're staying over, just like, Las Vegas, and look at all the hotels they have, look at all the convention centers and attractions they have. Corinth is doing the same thing, and it's really attributable to their innovation, to the cleverness. Hey, Sisyphus was known as a clever king. Sisyphus was warned, by the way, so we still have to get to that warning as to what ends up happening to Sisyphus the king. But when people see the success of Corinth, they know that it could be partly because of the clever King Sisyphus. But they also know with getting rich, they could grow. They could expand. Now, you have to know what a colony is, I think, for a lot of reasons. In the United States of America, we started from 13 original colonies. What is a colony? Well, in our case, United States, I'm in Ohio. It's not one of the original colony areas, but my ancestors might have come through one of the original colonies, like Massachusetts, the Plymouth colony. The Pilgrims came. And who were the Pilgrims? They were people from England. They had a religious reason why they wanted to leave England. And let's check out that definitions there. Are they partially under control of another country? Yeah, a little bit. They had their own Mayflower Compact, but we know we had to end up having a Declaration of Independence from the English in 1776. Now, that's long after 1620. A colony could have a long-time relationship and a very good, healthy relationship with its original. So it's a settlement. It's a spin-off. A colony is a spin-off. Now, would Corinth ever want to spin off and make a colony? Yes, of course they would. They are rich and successful in trade. So why wouldn't they want to put up those trade posts in other places? So how do you start a colony? I'm asking you, how do you start a colony? What do? Put it in the chat. If you have an idea, if you know what the next thing is that I'm about to tell you on how to start a colony, put it in the chat. Because if you put Delphi as your answer, how do you start a colony? You go to Delphi and you ask for understanding. You ask for the oracle's guidance. Because if the oracle guides you in a way to start a colony, you'll do it, because that is how you understand. Ancient Delphi. So the question in this segment is, how is Corinth, how is Delphi ramping up? Delphi continues to gain influence, continues to be successful in what they're doing. They build a picture of knowledge. They help people understand the world and what's going on in the world. So they know where good places would be to start a colony. They would know where good places are to avoid because of war, perhaps. You would get beat up. So these colonies are being made to the west. And some of these famous colony stories involve significant messages, like where they get one of the big oracle messages. Only 8 times a year did they really open up the temple with the priestesses doing that show. And sometimes they would give interesting advice. And you'll hear about this again because other places that get established from different city-states will do it because Delphi told them to do it. Corinth colonizes the very famous and powerful Syracuse. That's in Corfu. Modern Corfu is not very far away. So go to the map here, and I can see Corfu is pretty much still within the range of Greek places. And keep in mind that Greece is not a country during the Archaic Age and really until any of the big uniters, the conquerors, unite all of the city-states together. That happens way later. So these city-states are really independent. They have shared Greek culture, but they're very independent. And so Corfu is inside the Aegean Sea world. They're inside the Greek world. But where is Syracuse? Syracuse. It's way over there in Italy. It's in Sicily. That's not that far away, but Sicily is not Greece. But this is now showing more interconnectedness. We've got Greeks settling in Sicily. There's going to be a lot of colonies. Greece makes a lot of colonies because they're getting rich. Places like Corinth are getting rich, and Delphi is becoming even more influential because Delphi helps you decide where to put a colony. Well, now it's time for the games. Why do we have Olympics every 4 years? Because ancient Greeks had games at Olympia every 4 years. But just like in our world today, if you want to be on the Olympic team every 4 years, you've got to participate in championships every year. World championships, you got to peak at the right time. Well, the ancient Greeks did the same thing. Where else do you think games were hosted, major games besides Olympia? Give you 2 guesses. And if you said Delphi and Corinth, you would be right. The Corinth games were called the Isthmian games because of the Isthmus. And they started because King Sisyphus saw Melicertes fall from the cliff. He knew that there was some significance to this event. It took him to Delphi to ask for guidance. He was warned about dishonoring the gods, and so he thought the games would show honor. honor to Melicertes as a funeral, but then they become games to honor the gods, specifically Poseidon here. And I saw this statue of Poseidon, took this picture not far from my hotel on the coast of Corinth. And the Isthmian Games happen every 2 years, actually. 1 year before and after the Olympia Games, you could do the running contest, you could do the music contest, that included girls. Most of these events are just boys, like boxing. And if you go to Delphi and you want to do the games once every 4 years, what are the names of the games? They're not Delphian games, but they are the original name. Remember that Apollo had to kill a python, the Pythian games, the Pythos, the original. So they have running. They've got chariot races, which it's hard to picture. So I've been inside this stadium. This is the stadium in Delphi. It's way at the top. So this is all the way you have to climb the full distance to be able to see this. But I don't know how they did the chariot games so much, but they did. And these are games in honor of Apollo. But the very best event, my favorite event, in fact, because the Greeks did this, it probably saves Greece. In a future lesson, we will mention this. This event is my favorite. The Greeks put on armor. They run. They're in a full kit of armor. So that's like 50, 60, maybe 70 pounds. And in these running races, they have to train, obviously. And if they served in the military and they ever had to do that, it might just give them an incredible advantage. You see that word hoplite. Hoplon. A hoplite is a soldier that carries the hoplon shield, the hoplitodromos, the hoplitodromos. That's my favorite event, and I think I'm going to recreate that someday. The games. The games on Mount Parnassus. I like this shot, one of my groups, and just how bright and beautiful everything was, the sun, the mountains, and that's Mount Parnassus there in the center. We had stopped here, hopped off our tour bus to take a picture, just like ancient travelers would have done if they had come from the land route. And maybe they're coming for the games, or maybe they're coming to seek understanding. But the Isthmian Games, in that significant crossroads of transportation, a center of trade, people love going to Corinth. And it's oftentimes compared to a lot of cities that receive significant tourism. So what's the enduring legacy of a place like Corinth? Well, they get very wealthy from trade. King Sisyphus was clever. He knew that this was going to be an incredible location, and it endures. It's only going to get bigger and better. During Roman times, you'll hear about Corinth again, and they have the Isthmian Games, so that's going to be a big deal. What about Delphi? Delphi is the place to go for understanding. It's only going to become more significant. More and more information lands there. People go, and more significant events are tied to some of the understanding they gained after going to Delphi. And I remember that King Sisyphus did go there as an important person with a difficult question when he saw Melicertes fall, and he was expecting something different. What did he come away with? It was a warning. Did you know that King Sisyphus was actually so clever? He had tricked his way out of the underworld twice. He dishonored the gods, disrespected, and wasn't that part of his warning? And didn't they say something about a relentless struggle against fate when he finally makes it down to the underworld? Payback, consequence. He did not act virtuously. And maybe this is still going on, but for all eternity, he was supposed to be pushing a boulder up a hill. And when it gets to the top, it rolls right back down. That's fate. And it's a relentless struggle. And if only he had taken a little extra time at Delphi to know himself, to know that he was clever, cunning, and would he do it at the wrong time with the wrong people and dishonor the gods? They warned him that he would, and he didn't heed that warning. Thank you for taking the time to learn something that matters in all of history, and that includes your history. Some classical truth for your journey, because kingdoms rise and fall, power fades, but virtue endures.